majority, the lower federal courts may be the most powerful bulwark against Trumpism in the years ahead. And before he leaves the White House, President Joe Biden may be able to do something about that by installing a record number of federal judges. Donald Trump set the current record, confirming 234 federal judges in his first term in office. But Joe Biden is a close second, having already confirmed 215 judges, including 3 just this week. And he is not done. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer told Democrats yesterday to prepare for a final push to confirm as many judges as possible in these last few weeks before the next Congress begins. That effort got a boost yesterday when Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia signaled that he is willing to back Democrats' judicial nominees, even those without Republican support, because, as Manchin said, we are in different times right now. Yes, we are, Joe Manchin. Joining me now is Lisa Rubin, MSNBC legal correspondent and dear friend of the program. Lisa, thank you for spending some time here on your Friday night. Let me just first get to the notion of the lower courts and from your bigger, the 30,000 foot view here, how essential they can and should be in acting as a guardrail to Trump's most potentially unlawful measures during a second term.
Alex, when I think about what a Trump second term looks like, the lower courts, and particularly the district courts, are imperative that they remain guardrails. And we saw that really during Trump's first term, particularly around the Muslim ban, around the attempts to add the citizenship question by the Census Bureau. There were any number of attempts made by the Trump administration to change policies in ways that felt blatantly unconstitutional. And of course, our district courts were the first lines of defense, and in many cases issuing what then Attorney General Bill Barr complained about, nationwide injunctions that prevented those policies from taking place and being implemented.
I mean, it seems like we should hold out hope that those courts will do what they're supposed to do, regardless of who the judges are, partisan, or that they're not acting in partisan fashion, right? The reality is that, independent and apart from these, judgeships that we're talking about, the looming prospect of Trump 2.0 is shaping judges' decisions in ways not really seen before. And I'm talking particularly about January 6th defendants and those who've been convicted of crimes, right? There are 2 judges that have already delayed sentencing for January 6th rioters over the assumption that they're ultimately just going to get pardons from Donald Trump. Can you talk about how unusual that is for judges to preemptively assume it's pointless to sentence someone convicted of a crime?
I'm not really aware of any other analog, but before we condemn those judges and say that they're just throwing up their hands and feeling helpless, I want to provide a counter view about what might be going through their minds. In the District of Columbia, where all of these cases are situated, the courts have been entirely overwhelmed by January 6th and the caseload that it has brought upon these judges. And that means for other litigants, they are having to wait longer to have motions disposed of or to go to trial. It has literally clogged up the federal courts in D.C. So if I'm a judge thinking through what my caseload looks like, who else is waiting for trial, I might not want to use judicial resources right now on a case where I know the defendant is going to get pardoned, particularly if it means delaying justice for someone else and if it means calling in jurors whose efforts are only going to be futile several weeks to months from now. Think about how that affects potential jurors out there in D.C. to see 12 of their peers stand in judgment of someone only to have it wiped clean later. Doesn't really inspire confidence in the concept of jury service, which, as you and I know, next to voting is one of the most elemental things about our democracy.
Yeah, I kind of wonder how broad the scope of pardons is going to be. Donald Trump has expressed a zeal for getting people off the hook, but at the same time, I think in an interview with Time magazine in April, Trump said, in the way that only Trump can, if somebody was evil and bad, I would look at that case differently. I mean, it's hard to expect the naturally unexpected whims of Donald Trump, Lisa, but would you expect that someone like Enrique Tarrio is going to get off the hook here? I mean, how ambitious do you think the Trump Justice Department or Trump can be in terms of issuing these pardons?
Well, look, Alex, my mantra for the next 4 years and counting is expect the unexpected. I don't put anything past the ambitions of the Trump administration and their allies. That having been said, To the extent that President-elect Trump hews to his promise to look at these on a case-by-case basis, he doesn't have to pardon people for folks to necessarily get off the hook. There are a number of cases that have not yet been tried, as we were just discussing, and the Department of Justice could dismiss those cases entirely, and therefore, without pardoning individual defendants, make their legal problems go away, because once a future Department of Justice would come into being after this Trump administration, they would be well past statutes of limitations. So there are various ways to make these legal problems go away for people, whether it's through a pardon or not.
As we talk about Trump escaping accountability for his potentially criminal actions, and we talk about his allies getting pardons, there's one guy that can't seem to get off the hook, and that person is Rudy Giuliani, Lisa. He had to do some things today as part of his defamation suit. Can you talk a little bit more about how Rudy is paying the piper?
So Rudy, for the first time, has officially turned over some, but not all, of the property that he's been ordered by a Manhattan federal court judge to turn over to Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. They are the two Georgia election workers that he defamed when he accused them of essentially passing a thumb drive full of ballot information back between them. It turned out to be a ginger mint, and he ruined their lives in the process. And he now owes them $148 million per a jury verdict in D.C. Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss then sued Rudy Giuliani here in Manhattan to recover some of what he owes them. And today, he handed over to them his vintage Mercedes-Benz. It's a 1980s Benz, originally driven by the actress Lauren Bacall, and 2 watches. That's a start, but not even a considerable dent in what he owes them. I should note that perhaps the most valuable thing Rudy Giuliani has is his Manhattan apartment. And as far as we know, Alex, that is not yet in the women's possession.
Let's just focus for the moment, in this climate, on the fact that Rudy Giuliani had to hand over a vintage Mercedes-Benz, a watch, and a ring to Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. There is just the beginning of a little justice in that case.